Hello, and welcome to the Saved as Draft podcast, where I, Bradley Ramsey, talk to you about what it's like to be a writer, what I'm working on, and why you should care. It's snowing here, folks, a lot. Not as bad as other places, but it's definitely snowing. There's still snow on the ground, it was coming down earlier, and the fun part about it is that my driveway is on a pretty steep incline, and I didn't get out there and shovel the snow, as fast as I probably should have, and it turned to concrete. Yeah, you should have seen me out there the other day. I had to literally chip away at it, and my plastic snow shovel had no hope. So I'm essentially trapped here, because my car is not getting up that incline with that much ice. It's, I could throw on some ice skating shoes, and it'd be like a rink out there. That's how bad it is. It's also just after 5 o'clock here on a Friday on the East Coast, and thanks to daylight savings, it is dark. Seasonal depression is one of the main features of living here, apparently. On a separate note, and a more serious one, my heart goes out to everyone in Los Angeles, in California, dealing with the fires right now. I have a lot of coworkers out there. I work for a company on the West Coast, and I've checked in with a few of them, and fortunately, I've heard they're doing well. And they are safe, although based on some stuff that I've heard, a few of my coworkers had to evacuate, and some even lost their houses. So here's hoping that those fires are contained as soon as possible. I know there's a lot of people working really hard on it. Moving past the weather, wanted to also dedicate this first episode to my girlfriend, Sarah. She and I have been dating 1 year as of today, and it has been a crazy year. Maybe one of these days I'll talk about it on the podcast, but no matter how bad it gets, she's always there. She's, as they say, a real one, and very rare based on my experience. So, congratulations to Sarah and myself for the 1 year anniversary. Very, very grateful for her. Very excited to see what's to come. And also, super grateful for her support. She has supported my writing from day one, continues to do so, and that is just... words cannot describe how much I appreciate that. So, dedicating this episode to Sarah. Last piece of housekeeping before we jump into the structure that I have figured out for this series. Next week, starting Monday, is Blue Pitch on Blue Sky. If you're not on Blue Sky, I highly recommend it. It's been a great platform to interact with other writers. Certainly better than Twitter, and I'm not calling it X, so... I moved over to Blue Sky, once I realized that Twitter/X was becoming a, shall we say, dumpster fire. And it's been great. Like I said, lots of writers on there, connecting with a lot of great people. And if you're not familiar with pitch events on social media, they're a really great way to kind of put your work out there. Whether it's, something that you're writing and you're in the middle of the first draft of your novel, or something that's already done and edited and you're, querying for literary agents. Lots of reasons to participate in those pitch events. You usually get a lot of great feedback too, and if anything, it's a great motivator. So yeah, Monday on Blue Sky. If you're not already on there, get on there over the weekend, get your mood boards ready, get your pitch ready, and you can find the details over there. Just search Blue Pitch and you'll find it. But I highly recommend it. Those are really fun, and there's already some great kind of Q&A stuff that they've posted that you can participate in leading up till Monday. So just wanted to throw that out there. All right, let's get into the episode. So this first section of the podcast is what I'm calling This Week on Substack. And this is actually my first week, if you can believe it, on Substack. I've heard of the platform before, but I haven't really kind of dove into it until this week. First impressions are great. Once again, lots of writers, lots of positivity, all the things that I wish you saw everywhere on social media, but you rarely do. The tools are great, kind of setting up my publication, which I've called The Writer's Journey, as a play off of The Hero's Journey. I know it's probably been done before, but I like it. It's been great. And, a lot of the tools are easy to use. I'm not a designer, but I use things like Canva and Unsplash, and I'm trying to, create some sort of visual identity. And I feel like it's going well. So, yeah, so far, so good. I have, I think, 5 subscribers, Sarah being one of them, of course. And that's great. Honestly, that's great. I, obviously love to see that number go up, but at the same time, I know these things are a long game, and you really got to kind of be consistent and put yourself out there. and just keep publishing. And, I'm a firm believer in the fact that everybody's got their own unique voice, and that if you keep at it, you will eventually get noticed, and you will grow that audience, and people will see what you bring to the table that is unique to you. And so I'm not worried about it, but I do want to say thank you to those 5 subscribers. Maybe next week I'll do a dedication to them. All right, so also this week on Substack, as part of my first week, I posted my first intro piece. Let me go and pull it up here. I believe the headline was, "Are you there, Substack? It's me, Bradley." And I just wanted to kind of let my sort of humorous / slightly sarcastic voice come through. And the article just kind of talks about why I joined Substack, how I got started as a writer, and just some other projects that I'm working on in 2025, which I'll get into a little bit more detail later in this episode. But yeah, check it out. It's pretty cool. You can get a really good overview of what's happening in my little world if you are curious. And that was my first post. But I also this week, I also published a piece on my writing goals for 2025. Again, going a little bit deeper into some of the things that I'm working on. And then finally, a piece kind of for my fellow writers out there called How to Write Through the Stress. And I'll talk about this one for a second here, because stress for me is something that has historically been a major detriment to my productivity as a writer. If I'm stressed out, if life isn't going the way that I want, if I have a lot on my mind, I find it very, very, very hard to be creative. And I know I'm not the only one. That being said, I've got a lot going on right now. I'm not really in a place to talk about it, but let's just say it's very stressful. And this is on the personal side, obviously. Things are going great in my professional life. I have to shout out my coworkers again, my boss, incredible people, really supportive. And working with me while I try to handle some of this personal stuff. But despite all of that, I've been writing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this new Substack, and I wouldn't have stuff to talk about. So clearly, I've figured something out when it comes to stress and writing. And that's what the article talks about. Kind of gives us some tips on what works for me, what's been helping me, especially recently. Hopefully, it's useful to you. Would love to get some feedback on it. Without going too deep, I kind of discuss 3 steps that I believe can kind of help keep that productivity up even when the stress is high. So step 1 is separate yourself from the stress, and that kind of talks about something that I need to do, kind of practice what I preach more. Separating yourself from where you work. And I work from home, so I have a home office, but I've been bad about writing in that office, trying to just, kind of lump the writing into the regular work, and that doesn't really work. And it also is a major drain on your mental energy. So step 1 is I recommend finding a separate space, whatever that may be, and you can read more about it in the article. Step 2, share your victories and your struggles. This is a big one. I have up until recently not been super active on social media, but I decided to kind of put myself out there back before Twitter became X/dumpster fire. And I discovered that the writing community is incredibly supportive. I mean, these are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. If whether you're sitting there being like, hey, I just published a new short story, or it's like, oh man, I'm stuck in writer's block, or whatever you got going on, these people are there for you. And it feels like they're there for you in a genuine kind of way, which is awesome, honestly. And like I said, Blue Sky's been great for that. Substack, I'm starting to connect with some people on there. Threads, seeing a little bit of it there. But in general, the writing community is just some of the nicest people you'll ever run into. So I highly recommend engaging with them, talking about it, being open with both your victories and your struggles as a writer. And you might find that the people are really interested in what you have to say and really eager to help out. And I think that's something that a lot of us forget. And when you're stressed out, when you don't feel like writing, when imposter syndrome's hitting hard, that kind of positivity can really turn things around for you. I know it can for me. So just wanted to share that. And finally, step 3 is go where the inspiration takes you. And this is one where I kind of recommend walking the line a little bit because, if you're like me and you're working on multiple projects or you've got multiple ideas, you're probably thinking, well, if I try to work on all these things at once, nothing's going to get done. And that's true. But think of it this way. If you're struggling and inspiration is pointing you, if you're thinking, man, I really want to work on this one project. I know I should do this, but I'd rather work on this. Just allow yourself a little bit of that flexibility, right? Go work on the thing that you actually feel excited about in the moment. And before you know it, more often than not, you'll be excited about that other thing as well. And so that's kind of step 3 of the article. Like I said, check it out on Substack. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Really excited about it. And I'm going to keep doing content like this as well on Substack. I want to kind of, I'm not saying that I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been doing this a long time. I've been working from home for over 10 years. I basically said, yeah, I'm going to be a writer back in 2nd grade and never, ever changed my mind. So I feel like I have something to say that is hopefully of use. And so that's why I'm here. And so we're going to talk about more of that kind of stuff and more tips and tricks and tools and stuff like that for writers. But also, as a writer, I'm definitely producing stuff as far as, short stories and things like that. So Substack's also going to be a place where you'll see some of that, which brings me to my last piece. I published part 1 of 3. So part 1 is live. Part 2 go live next week, of a science fiction horror story called The Unfathomable Beast of Xanadu 4. My style of horror is very leaning towards cosmic, so I love anything involving space, Lovecraftian themes, stuff like that. And so Xanadu 4 is a special story of mine. It's a bit long. I've published it once elsewhere, and it just didn't really ever gain traction. So what I've done with Substack is I've gone ahead and split it up into 3 parts, and I'm hoping that that'll do better. It's already got more views on Substack than it had in the other place where I had published it. So it seems like a good sign. But the storyline, just to give you a quick pitch if you're interested, is kind of takes place in a futuristic sort of setting on a kind of floating colony out in the middle of space that's owned by the Darlushian Syndicate. And the story features a character named Johnny, who is contracted to work for the Syndicate, and he and a bunch of other mercenaries are hired to go to this planet called Xanadu 4 to capture some sort of world-ending monster that lives down there, because the mob boss in charge of the Darlushian Syndicate wants to put it on display in his menagerie of dangerous creatures. The guy is psychotic. So in part 1, you kind of get a little bit of taste of that before he heads out on his mission, learn about him, kind of what he's been through. I really like this story, and I'm hoping that it'll resonate a bit more on Substack, because it's one of those stories where I feel like it balances the emotion of the character. It makes you care about the characters, even though some of them are less likable than others. But then it also gets into the cosmic horror, and then kind of makes you care about the monster a little bit, which I thought was pretty cool. So, again, would love feedback on that if you get a chance to check it out. Part 2 will be out next week. Part 3 will be the conclusion the following week. All right, next up, we're going to talk about my current projects, and this one's going to be a little bit longer than normal, mostly because of the fact that I just published some articles about my goals for 2025. So I'll try to keep this light. I don't want this podcast to really go much over 20 minutes total. I feel like everybody's busy, so I appreciate your time. But current projects, there's 3 that we're going to talk about here. First off is my upcoming novel, my debut novel, once it's published. Second is an animated series that I'm working on called The Chronicles of Clinchport. And third is the work that I'm doing over on a website called Vocal. That's vocal.media. So let's get right into it. The novel. As I mentioned earlier, my novel is cosmic horror, which is kind of my main, bread and butter when it comes to the horror that I do. It's currently titled For Those About to Vote. And it is the first book in the Shattered Star trilogy. And in this first book, we are in a near-future version of Earth, in the United States specifically, where NASA and other world powers have basically discovered a world-ending asteroid that's coming towards us. And so they work in secret to figure out a way to destroy it before it can hit Earth. Because if it does, it's curtains for humanity. So The book starts kind of in the middle of all of that, but the idea is that once they've destroyed the asteroid, they think all is well and good. Chunks of the asteroid kind of fall and land around the US and other parts of the world. They don't think anything of it. They're small enough where they don't cause a ton of damage. But then an infection starts spreading. And it becomes quickly apparent that there was something hiding inside that asteroid. And it's not your regular garden variety type of infection or virus. This is a parasite, one that's alien in nature. And the way that it works is that once you're infected, you have no idea when you're going to turn. No idea. The theory in the book is that the parasite waits until it has the best possible chance of spreading. That's one indicator, but it's not the only indicator. When it does decide to take over your body and quote-unquote turn you, it rewrites your DNA in whatever way it sees fit to accomplish its goal of spreading. So we're not talking zombies here. We're talking it's going to turn your bones into knives that come out of your hand. It's going to blow you up like a balloon full of pus so you can explode and infect a bunch of people in a crowd. Whatever it needs to do, it's going to rewrite your DNA, and it's going to do it fast, and it's going to cause a lot of damage. So that's scary. The reason why the book's called For Those About to Vote is because it centers around the fact that everybody who's infected is currently being put into quarantine zones. And these are packed to the brim. So Congress is getting all this pressure to come up with an idea of how they can mitigate this, do something about the growing infections, and then obviously take care of the people who are already infected. And so the book begins, it has 6 different points of view, but one of the points of view is the kind of assistant to a U.S. senator, and we learn that Congress is convening in the coming weeks to vote on a potential set of ideas, like 3 different options, basically. And so that's why the book's called that. It's also called that because when I first came up with the idea way back in 2016, it started as a short story, and it was called I Voted, and it was this kind of dystopian future sort of thing. I don't want to get too much into it, but essentially I started writing that story, and then I said, you know what, this sounds like the middle. This sounds like book 2. So, ergo, let's go ahead and write book 1, turn into a trilogy, because I already had ideas, and let's have it kind of be themed around this idea of voting, right, with a little bit of a political angle, but not too much. Primarily, we're talking cosmic horror here. So that's how I got to the name For Those About to Vote. It kind of leads nicely into the title of book 2. So let me move on here, because I know I'm coming up on time, and I've still got a few more sections to go. This is definitely not going to be 20 minutes. I apologize. If you leave after 20 minutes, hell, if you made it to 20 minutes, thank you. But if you leave after 20 minutes, I understand. Project number 2, and this is another one that's kind of ongoing, and I'll provide updates, obviously, on future episodes. Project number 2 is the Chronicles of Clinchport. This is a really fun animated series, and I will definitely, if you check out my article on Substack about my projects for 2025, you'll see a link to an article I did over on vocal.media about the series, and it goes real in depth in kind of how it works and what the plans are for it, but I'll give you the quick pitch here. It's an animated series set in a fictional town in Virginia called Clinchport. And it's known for being one of the smallest towns in America. So, people mostly just write it off. No one's ever heard of it, obviously. But the series kind of talks about the town, its history, its residents. And we're going for a combination of horror and comedy here. So there's some strange stuff going on in Clinchport. And the people are involved with it. And some know more than others. And it's wild. It's going to get really crazy, really off the walls. And our goal is to turn it into a transmedia property. So the idea is that you can watch the animated series, you get the whole story, you laugh ideally, and maybe cry. I don't know. It's going to get pretty emotional. But you can watch the whole series and just kind of get that story if you want. However, Clinchport's going to exist in other places as well. So we're going to have it show up as a podcast with its own separate storyline, specifically about the history of the town, right? And then I've already published a few short stories over on vocal.media that are just kind of side stories set around Clinchport or prior to the events of the series. So you're going to be able to kind of experience the story in multiple ways across different mediums. And that's what we mean by transmedia property. If you get a chance, Google something called Unknown 9. They just released a video game, but they're a transmedia property that I kind of got inspiration from. The game was good. It wasn't great. I can talk about it later. This podcast will have a section on gaming in each episode because I'm a huge nerd. But Unknown 9 was interesting as a concept, and they have not only the game, they have a comic book, they have some webisodes on YouTube, and a few different series there, and they also have podcasts as well. And all of it is, again, the same type of concept where you can experience a story in these standalone formats, or you can kind of absorb all of it and kind of piece things together for yourself. And I think that's really cool. So that's what we're doing with Clenchport. Definitely check out my article on Substack about 2025 writing goals. Number 2 in that list, it links out to the article on vocal.media where you can learn more. All right, last but not least, speaking of vocal.media, if you haven't heard of it, it's a great website. It's very similar to medium.com. But it's more fiction focused, and I joined it originally because they were doing fiction writing challenges, and I'm someone who works well with prompts. So if you give me an idea, I can kind of run with it, sort of thing. And so, in 2025, I'm going to keep working on Vocal, obviously. I actually just published a story a couple days ago that was a choose-your-own adventure, if you can believe it. And it worked actually pretty well. I kept it simple because there's not a whole lot of tools on Vocal to make it interactive. But people loved it, and it actually won a top story award as of this morning. So really happy to see that, and definitely encouraging in terms of doing more of those. So I would encourage you to check it out if you get a chance. It's not on Substack, vocal.media, search Bradley Ramsey, or if you're quick enough, you'll see me on the front page under the top stories. And honestly, it's choose your own adventure is something that anybody can do. So if you're inspired by it, take the idea, run with it, use the same format, and if you do, please share it with me. I want to see it. That would be really cool if somebody actually adopted that format. All right, so let's pause there on the current project section. Next up, we have my weekly writing tip. And this week, my tip is to seek out prompts. Prompts are your friends. Some people like coming up with stuff out of the blue, and that's great, and I do it sometimes too. But what I really like is if you give me, and I mean, I've done everything from a single word prompt to, they give you the opening sentence, or they just say, okay, do something in this genre. There's all kinds of ways you can go about it, and it's not hard to find them either. Something that I've been using recently that I'd recommend is, it's called a story engine deck. You can Google it. Not sponsored, by the way. But it's very cool. And it allows you to build sort of your own settings or stories as, detailed or as high level as you want. It has different types of cards for characters, for, motivations, for conflicts. Check it out, see what you think. But that's a great way to get yourself in that creative mindset and thinking about how to, leverage your creativity if you have creative energy and you don't know what to do with it. Prompts are super helpful. Lots of ways you can access them, free and paid. I highly recommend it, especially if you find yourself stuck in some writer's block. Okay, second to last section here before we wrap up this first episode. I would like to throw out some gaming and podcast recommendations each week. So this week, sorry, I think I bumped the mic there. This week, let's see. Start with some podcasts. Recently, within the last, 6 months or so, I've been really digging Welcome to Night Vale. This is a big one. You may have already heard of it. Lots of people listen to it. I've been listening to it because, obviously I want to, kind of do something similar with our Chronicles of Clenchport series. But in general, it's a different type of storytelling than anything I would ever do. So it's very intriguing in that way. And I just like the absurdity of it. And honestly, it has a lot of heart, too, as you get into it. So check out Welcome to Night Vale. Very cool series. From the same creators. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but it's two guys who collaborate on Welcome to Night Vale. They have a bunch of podcasts, but they have another one called Start With This. And this is a great podcast for writers. It's unfortunately not releasing any new episodes, but there's a lot in the backlog. And in this podcast, they talk about how to get started with a podcast or just with writing in general. And they have great tips, a lot of insight, really good wisdom. But not only that, they also give you something to consume and something to create at the end of each episode. And I really like that. It gives you, again, it's like a prompt. It allows you to kind of have somewhere to start with, that doesn't leave you, on your own trying to figure out what to do next. So start with this, another podcast I'd recommend. And number 3, Astonishing Legends. This is a fun one. There's 2 guys on here who clearly love what they do, and they have a team of people who do a ton of research into urban legends, supernatural phenomenon, conspiracy theories, stuff like that, and their episodes can run pretty long, but I promise you they are worth it. I myself like to throw on a good podcast, especially this one, when I'm making dinner, doing the dishes, and just listen to the story, as I kind of go about, doing my thing. And this is another source of inspiration for me too, actually. I mean, it's one of those things where you hear these crazy stories and, your brain kind of absorbs them and your subconscious starts working with them. And they're like, next thing you know, you got an idea and it's inspired by one of these things. So if you're into urban legends, conspiracy theories, supernatural stuff, please check out Astonishing Legends. Great couple of guys running that podcast. Highly recommend it. All right. And to wrap it up here, for this section at least, let's talk about the games that I'm currently playing. I've actually been writing more than gaming this week, which is bonkers to me. I've usually I'm way more on the gaming side than the writing side, but hey, I'll take it. Top of mind for me right now, I'm working through Dragon Age Veilguard, which I know has some controversy surrounding it in terms of like the quality of the writing. And here's the thing, it's not the best writing in the series. I think Dragon Age Origins was the best for that reason. But Veilguard it has great combat and the art is beautiful and the writing, while not perfect, is good. And it's the kind of world that sucks you in. And, especially if life is being a lot, it's good to have that escapism. So for that reason, I'm enjoying Dragon Age Veilguard. Another RPG that I'm working on is Fantasian Neo Dimension. This one just got a port for consoles. It was originally a mobile RPG. It's from Mistwalker, which is composed of some Final Fantasy veterans. And if you're a long-time gamer like me, you might remember Lost Odyssey, which was a phenomenal RPG for the Xbox 360. If you haven't played it, you can play it backwards compatible on the newest versions of the Xbox. Please check it out. Incredible turn-based RPG. Easily could have been a Final Fantasy game. Would have fit right into the series. Can't recommend it enough. Fantasian Neo Dimension is like kind of a streamlined, sort of turn-based RPG, similar to the studio's other work on games like Lost Odyssey. It's got some really cool mechanics, a very fascinating world. The way that its random battles work out kind of in the overworld is that you can bank those battles if you don't want to do them right then and there. You can like flip on this machine essentially, and it stores all the enemies that you should have fought, and then you can go and fight all of them at once later for some bonuses and some extra challenge. And it's crazy, but it works. Works really well. So, if you're a fan of classic RPGs, definitely give Fantasian Neo Dimension a look. Last but not least, in the gaming section here, I've been playing more VR lately. I love VR. I have a PlayStation VR 2 headset, and I have a Quest 3. Quest 3 has been getting a lot of work because it's easy to set up, wireless and all that. Been playing Assassin's Creed Nexus, which is wonderful. If you're a fan of Assassin's Creed, it's very fun. Being in first person, in virtual reality, in the shoes of the great characters from that series like Ezio Auditore da Firenze, as well as Cassandra, and I believe Connor might be in it. I don't know. I haven't played enough of it yet. But it's good. It's really good. And then another VR game that I would highly recommend if you have a Quest 3 or a mixed reality headset is Starship Home. This was a really cool one that projects, whatever room you're in, it projects elements of a starship in the room around you, and you can kind of walk around in physical space and look out windows into space and interact with different kind of modules in your spaceship. It's not super challenging, but it's very fun and very, very immersive. So I recommend it. And hey, I love gaming, so if you have any games you want to recommend, anything with a good story, as a writer, I like a good story, so if you know of any good games, let me know. I mean, I've played a lot, and I'm constantly seeking out kind of lesser-known indie titles, but hey, you never know. If you can find one that I haven't played, that's impressive. So, let me know. All right, well, we're coming up here on 30 minutes. Jeez. So let me wrap this up. if you made it this far, holy crap, thank you. And if you haven't, well, you're cool too, I suppose. Um, let's get this cat in the bag though, shall we? So I'm planning on doing this podcast every Friday at the end of the work week. Next week, we're going to keep talking about the progress I've made on my novel. We're going to discuss some new articles that I have hopefully published by then on Substack. We'll go through a quick run through of part 2 of the Xanadu story that I mentioned earlier. And we'll talk about any new publications on Vocal, including maybe, who knows, another Choose Your Own Adventure. Well, folks, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. This has been Saved as Draft. I'm Bradley Ramsey, and thank you for listening.